Hi guys, welcome back. This is part two of the R6 rebuild. I've decided for part two we're going to be focusing on the engine, which I have here, rather than the bike, which is there, because I'm intrigued to see what's happened with this engine, to be fair, and yeah, so we're going to find out. There's probably going to be a two-part series because it'll be an extremely long video stripping down this engine and explaining everything. I want to do quite a in-depth, detailed video of this engine and everything that I pretty much know about it from my experiences of working on them. I have done one of these videos before, and it's the video that's got the most views on my channel, so I thought I'd do a more up-to-date, better version of it. The fate of this engine is going to be decided pretty much now, what we're going to do with it, whether we end up rebuilding it and putting it back in this bike, or we end up just using the bits off of it to do the SL conversion. So, you know, one way or another, we need to find out what is up with this engine. So I've just got the oil draining out of it at the moment, the last sort of like remnants of the oil. I'm going to remove a few pipes and bits and pieces and get her ready and on the bench properly, and then we'll get stripping her down. So stick around and hope you enjoy. Right, so before I get too carried away with stripping this engine, because I was saying it's going to be a in detail video of this engine, I mean it to be an in detail video of this engine. So if you're having any problems with the R6 5EB engine in particular, then this is probably a good video to watch. Maybe skip through, try and find the section you need. So we're going to start off with an overall overview of the engine. I think is probably the best way to start. So we're going to go with that first of all. So before I get stripped too far, I'm going to turn you over to the engine now. Here we have the 599 600cc engine from Yamaha for the R6 5EB. The markings are here, as you can see. It says 5EB. Now if it's a SL, it will say a 5SL. In fact, I have an SL down here where you can see, oh, I can't bend the camera, there we go, 5SL, okay, right, so, carb fed, so these are the rubber grommets, rubber mounts for the carbs. They're individually bolted. As standard, they come with this one upside down, and that's to get at it from this side, because when the engine's in the bike you simply cannot get at this bolt. So easiest way to get these off when the engine's in the bike is not really even undo these, just wiggle the carbs and they will pop off. I mean, don't rip them off, because these can tear and they do split as well, causing obviously air leaks and running lean issues. So, you know, be careful when you're doing that. But I haven't had a problem yet with doing it. And then you just got to back these right off when you're refitting the carbs. These pipes here are for the balancing of the carbs. Now they got joined together by these little sort of two-way joiner things, and people have been mistaken for thinking that they are hollow, just like, you know, like what a T-piece would be. Obviously not T, a straight piece, but you know, it's not a joiner as such. It's actually a block off. So, you know, some people have joined their balancing gauges via that attached, and I wonder why that cylinder isn't showing a vacuum. Is because that is actually blocked off. So you would unpop all these pipes, take these completely out, and join your balancing gauges to that. Quite fiddly, but well worth doing, and once it's set up right, it's more or less a fit and forget kind of thing. Starter motor is down here. As you can see, it's tucked away in there, pretty simple to get at. The only thing is, once you do take that starter motor off, you have the little gear wheel in here, just flapping around in the wind. So you'll need to take off this cover, which you'll see later in the video, or maybe in the next video, about that, and we'll be removing that anyway, so you'll see that. In this first video, I'm going to be doing more or less a walk around of the engine and then a strip down of the head, see what damage has been caused to this engine, and see where we are. And in the next video we'll be focusing more on the bottom end and gearbox and how that works, and taking it all apart, and probably refitting some of it, to be honest, because I don't know at this stage. So there we go. Coil on plug, individual coils on the plugs, much better, much more reliable, much stronger spark. They are just push fit in, they're pretty tight, but you can get them out fairly easily. Chain driven, so we've got a chain in here joining the cams. This is your tensioner. These are a common failure point, and what often happens as well is these have to be in a certain way up. As you can see, it's got up written on the top there. Now, a lot of people don't realise that, and they put it in upside down. Now, it works on a ratcheting system with a spring, and if it's the wrong way up, then gravity and engine vibration causes this to release and not be able to grip, and and not be able to tighten up as the ratchet moves. So hence rattling chain problems. But they are also a failure point. You can get mechanical ones, to like mechanically adjust them, but unless it's a race bike, I really wouldn't bother, because they're not as reliable. They're not so much a fit and forget, as it were. Even though it's a common problem, you won't have problems with them that often. So it's just a case, if you do have a problem with it, just replace it for a standard one and you should be fine. Speed sensor is down in there, the 3-wire sensor. So you basically got live ground and signal, I think. I don't know. I've never actually tested one, because I've never really actually had one go wrong. I have sold loads of these on eBay from breaking bikes, so they do go wrong. But I never personally have had one go wrong. But as and when they do, it's a case of simply replacing it. It's just pop in, pop out. Neutral switch is around the back here, so when it's in the bike, when it's in the bike, it can be quite a faff to get at. And on the EBs, they have this type where it has a fillet screw that attaches the cable, and on the 5SL they have bullet connector hole. Sorry, a bullet connector sort of nipple poking off, and you just connect your loom straight onto that, which is much better. Your dipstick's down here, and when you're checking these, obviously you have the bike level and this, that and the other. But as you noticed, I had to unscrew it to get it out. Now the correct way of checking these is to unscrew it, wipe it, and then dip it fully in. Don't screw it in, and then pull it out, and then that is your desired level. That's your correct level reading, should I say. So that's the way you do those. No glass window or anything on these engines. You've got your water pump down here. Water flows, as in terms of comes out hot out the top of the head, goes into the radiator, gets cooled by the radiator, comes down, because as the water cools it drops, gets fed into this pipe, which is being pulled at by the water pump. This is a air release, so any air bubbles that get caught along the way can come up through this pipe, through here. There's also a tee off into the head, and then this comes along and goes into the top of your radiator. You've also got an oil cooler in the mix. It tees off, hang on, let me get a torch. It's not a very good torch, but it'll have to do. It tees off down there, joins in from the main system. Right, so it's getting a draw from the pump. There's your oil cooler there. It's basically you know, a core inside, and one side's water, the other side's oil, and then you've got this outlet pipe here. So I'll try and do this one-handed. This outlet pipe here just goes to the radiator, and just gets added into the mix along the way. So it's a pretty simple cooling system. Doesn't really go wrong unless you've got a leak radiator. These parts here on the pump can leak on the EBs, but they are modified on the 5SL. So if you do ever get a leaking one, just get a 5SL pump or pump cover, and you have that replaced. You'll have that problem rectified and out of there. That's the drain for the cooling system. So undo that, water comes flying out of there. Pretty simple stuff really. So that's it. Around here, oh, I just knocked it off its stand. Around here is the stator, or what we call the alternator or generator. 3-prong wire there for it, but I'll explain more of that when we get to it. Right, so here we are, we're all stripped down. There is a couple of things I forgot to mention while I was doing my little walk around. Oil level sensor is in the bottom of the sump. I will show you later in probably the second video, because obviously it's in the bottom of the sump and I can't turn the engine upside down at the moment, so that is there. That controls a little light on your dashboard, so you know when your oil's getting low, you get the light on the dash. La la la. A lot of people think it's oil pressure. It's not. It's oil level sensor. So that's that. Obviously you've got your gear change around here, gear shift shaft, and this is your output shaft, where your sprocket goes and what have you. So that's pretty much the bits I missed. So we're all stripped now. What we're going to do is I'm going to put you on a bit of a sped up video, because we're just going to take the cover off and the side cover off, and you know, there's pretty much nothing to see there. So you know, anyone with a 5mm Allen key can do that, so we'll get on with that. Right, when taking off this cover, guys, be careful when you pull it off, and pull it off sort of straight and level, because behind it and what it holds is not only the crankshaft sensor, but also you see this little bit here, this pocket. Now that's where the other end of that shaft sits, this little shaft here. Now that shaft holds the bottom of this rail guide, and that's the guide that the tensioner's on. So you can cause all sorts of problems by pulling that out. Now you can most of the time get it back in if you do pull it out. It's not too much of an issue, but you know, make sure that's the very next thing you do if you do pull that out, because otherwise you'll mess up the timing, cause risk of the timing jumping, and all sorts of trouble. And if the engine is in the bike, that's more trouble than it's worth. Trust me. Like trying to get all the timing marks right and all that stuff when it's in the bike is very difficult to see. So in here, like I just mentioned, we have our crankshaft sensor. We also have the trigger wheel here. Now this trigger wheel does a couple of things. One, it controls the spark, sends, you know, gives you the signal through this magnetic pickup. Now all these are different for the different bikes. I mean, there's so many variations of these. And you can actually get a modified one to where the woodruff key cutout on this is ever slightly off. So what that causes is this, all the depending on which make you get, all the teeth are one of them is slightly off. I think it's about 7 degrees, something like that, and it gives you I think advanced ignition. So you know, it gives you a bit better power, I guess. I don't know. I have actually got one in my toolbox, but I've never fitted it, never used it, so I don't really know, you know, the difference in using them. So that is that. The other thing it does is times up the engine. Now you notice this little T. I can't get my camera low enough. 1 second. There we go. This little T here, that stands for top dead center, and that little line next to it, you line that up with where the casings meet here. Alright, and then when that is lined up, the top marks, which are here, the other one's down under there somewhere, these should be facing away from each other. Basically they should be pointing at their corresponding thing. So that one says I for inlet, because this is the inlet side, so this side will be pointing at the inlet. That says E down there, I'll show you in a minute. And the timing mark should be pointing here, pointing at the exhaust, and that's your timing set. So I'm going to set you back up on the tripod, and we're going to get timing up and stripping down this bad boy and see what's blown up in it. Should be fun. Righty-o, so top of the engine we need to remove, so we need to get the cams out. Now to do this, it's always good practice to time it up first, because it's just safer. Now if you've got experience with engines and you're stripping the thing and you've done enough of them, then you generally don't need to, but this is a video for people looking for information, so I would say the best thing to do is just time it up. So simply 12mm spanner. I have taken the spark plugs out just to make it easier. I can't remember the compression, the ideal compression. I think, don't quote me if I'm wrong, this might not be right, but I think it's around 125 psi, 130 psi. But I've seen them, I think my gauges are off, but I've seen them down at quite often around 75 psi to 95 psi, and the bike runs perfectly fine. So, you know, it's one of them things. Now, this engine still turns fairly nicely, so don't know what actually happened. Is this engine went pop, and it was like, you know, a loud popping sound and then rattling, and a lot of smoke, a lot of blue smoke coming out. Now when I first got it, I think I showed the piston in the last video, when this bike, we first got hold of this bike, it had blown up, and I thought the usual cracked liners issue, or at least it would have the cracked liners issue, and we stripped the engine down to find the liner weren't cracked, but the one that normally does crack had the destroyed piston. So we put another head on it, another piston on it. There was a couple of nicks in the bore, but I thought it's worth the risk, and either that hasn't paid off or something else has gone completely pop. So I did measure the big end and fit the right shells, but I might have got it wrong, I don't know. So one of those things, just got to find out. It's lucky it wasn't one of the bikes I decided to sell. We'll be selling it now once we get it back up and running, but everything will be done properly in pucker. So right now the time is 180 degrees out there, so what's, you know, that's in time here. I would move you, but it takes a while to get set back up, so you'd have to take my word for it. That timing's there, the marks are pointing at each other there, so that's wrong. So we'll go around one more time, back to T, line that T up. Alright. So there we go. Here are our markings. Where's my torch? There's my torch. There's our marking there. Lining up that crankcase. Split the divide. And we've got I there for inlet, pointing at the inlet, and E there for exhaust pointing out the exhaust. Nice and simple, easy as pie. What we're going to do is next is we're going to release the tension off of this. Now the way of doing it is just unbolting it basically. When you're doing it back up, you've got this 10mm bolt on the back. Now you undo this is just like a plug, and you get a small flathead screwdriver in there, stick it in there, and you wind it clockwise, and it'll wind the piston back. Then you quite kind of jiggery pokery it in, sort of holding the spring tension on it, getting it in, getting the bolts done up, and then what I do is put a bit more tension on it so it's wound the thing back a little bit more, and then I pull the screwdriver out so it just drops the piston against the guide, and then it's set. So we can just take this out now, and then that'll be that. That'll be the chain tension off. Remove these bolts, just like so. I don't have good enough editing software or good enough editing skills yet to do the quickly, you know, in the videos of, you know, I'm undoing a couple of bolts, I'll just speed that up to half a second. You know, to do that I have to cut it right out of the video, just that section, and then sort of double speed it and then add the 3 sections back together, and it's a right pain in the ass. So unfortunately for things like the 2-second or 10-20 second couple of bolt removals, you're just going to have to bear with us, I'm afraid. For the long ones I'll pause you. So that's that. As you can see, the plunger is that. We've got our up part just there. Right, so we remove this bolt when we come to refitting it. Flathead screwdriver in there, wind it in. This comes in. As you can see, it won't move in, not at all. It's on a ratchet system, so it'll easily come out, but it won't go back in. And that's how that works. So that's the chain tension off. Alright, something's rattling around there. You hear it? Oh, it's just the guide. It's alright. It's me being done. Right, now it's safe to pull that pin out. Keep that safe in your bolt box. I'm going to grab a 12mm socket to be removing the trigger wheel. Now you don't need to. You can have the chain just dropped in the bottom, but I like to remove it completely, especially if we're doing a full strip down. So next thing we want to do is we want to be loosening off these bolts. Now this is a cam carrier, it's one single piece cam carrier. You have to undo these equally. So what I'm going to do is I am going to do this in a sped up version, but I'm going to do it properly and, you know, show you basically how it's done, so keep an eye out. Right, so that's that unbolted. As you can see in the video I sped up, I started sort of in the middle and worked my way out, and even when once it's all cracked off and I'm doing it with the gun, it's not impacting in any way, it's just unwinding it. It's just, you know, this is a million, well, not a million, you know, there's a good few bolts here to undo, so it takes a while to unwind them all by hand. So once that's off, once they're all undone, you can remove that. Now I like to keep the bolts in there. They're all the same anyway, but I just like to keep them in there rather than put them in the bolt box. It's just easier to keep them all together. Just rest them in the rocker cover. Perfect place for them. You can even put cams in the same place. Now the cams, simply just a case of lifting them out, and a good way of recognising these cams and telling them apart is these have got these little guides here that sit in guides in the cam carrier. Now if you can see here on the exhaust one, it's got a groove, right, running through, whereas on the inlet one it's solid. You see that? So that's an easy way of telling them apart. There is also, well, I say there is also, both the cam pulley has both E and I on it. Yeah, so depending on where it's fitted to what camshaft is what pulley that is. So, you know, you can get the cams easily confused. But if you remember that, it is in the Haynes manual too, so if anyone forgets. But the groove is for exhaust. So that's that. We can then pull these guides out. That one's just floating around in there because we've already removed the pin. Then we need a pair of pliers for the other one. Move the chain out. Literally just get hold of it at the bottom and give it a wiggle because it's just resting in the top of this head here. Pull that out and just check them. You don't want any grooving or scoring in them. They want to be completely flat. Alright, and these are both good. I know they're good because I built this engine. So, yeah. It's probably the reason why it blew up. I'm joking. Nah, but to be honest, I built it out of bits I had. So, you know, it was basically a free repair other than the cost of a head gasket and some oil and what have you. Right, now, anyway, the head is pretty much ready to come off. Have you ever heard of anyone talking about needing the valve clearances done, right? Well, what that is under here there are shims, right? Because between this tappet or bucket, whatever you want to call it, the gap between this and the camshaft, I'll just get a cam, for example, right? I want to make sure you're close enough to be able to see this. Which you're not really. I might have to do this by hand. So I'll explain it first. This is the lobe of the cam. This part here is the lobe of the cam. Now this, when the cam is rotated, this is the part that pushes down on the top of the bucket, which pushes the valve open, lets your air and fuel in, or lets your exhaust gases out, depending on what side it's on, right? Now when the cam comes around to this back face, there is a tiny little gap, a set gap that has a tolerance between the back side of this cam lobe and the tappet. Now on a EV engine, I used to have it written on my wall in my garage, so I thought I knew it off by heart, but it appears that I just discovered that I don't. I can't bloody remember it now, but I think the exhaust is between 0.21 and 0.30 millimeters, and the inlet I'm going to double check this because I don't want to get it wrong for the video. Right, yeah, so the intake valve clearance is between 0.11 to 0.20 millimeters, and the exhaust valves are 0.021 to 0.030 millimeters. Now what that is that gap between that lobe and this bucket. Now the way that is adjusted is, I grab a magnet, you take this bucket out, and here is a shim, tiny little shim. Now I don't know if you can see on there, there's a number, so that one's 190. That means it's 1.9 millimeters thick. Alright, now what you'll do is you'll have the whole engine together, well, all timed up and everything like that. You'll turn the cam so that the lobe is, the back of the lobe is level with the bucket, and then you'll get a feeler gauge, and then you'll check the gap, and you'll measure the gap, and you write it down, and you write them all down, and then you take it all apart and you find out what size shims you have fitted, and then you work out whether you need to make a bigger or a smaller gap. So basically, if you need to have a bigger gap, right, you need a thinner shim than what's in it. If you have a larger gap and you need to make it smaller, you need a thicker shim than what's in it. And then you basically, it's quite simple to work out. It's hard to grasp the first time you do it, but then the rest of the time it's pretty simple. It's easy. There'll be other videos on it showing you how to work out, you know, the clearances and stuff like that, but it's so easy. It's a case of like, you know, oh, my exhaust gap is, say, what, you know, the limit's 0.30, isn't it? So if you were measuring 0.35 and you had a 205 shim in there, you know, you need to go between sort of 200 and 191. Anywhere between 191 and 200 will be within, you know, it'll give you a within tolerance measurement. So that's that. So next we're gonna remove this head, see what lurks beneath. Cool. Right, so same as the cam carriers, removing these bolts, you want to do them in a kind of snail or circular motion, releasing the tension off the head evenly. And there is 2 bolts around the back there as well. 10 in total, I think. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yeah, 10 bolts in total. All these are quite far sunk in. Apart from this one, you might think, oh, that's strange, that's something wrong, but it's not. It's actually stepped up. The reason is, I think it's an oil gallery or something like that below, so they can't. You couldn't drill that far down into the block, so that one's stepped up. So first time I noticed that, I got a bit freaked out by it. So we're going to remove these bolts and get the head removed and see what we got. Well, there's a lot of oil in that cylinder. A lot of oil. All the valves are still on though. Head gasket appears to be okay. So let's get the crankshaft bolt in and turn the engine and see what's happened. Probably dropped a ring or something. You know what, it seems fine though. I mean, there's obviously a problem because there shouldn't be that much oil in a cylinder, but normally when they crack, they go right there, and there's nothing. Alright, and see, as you can see, this cylinder is actually alright. Like, it's not bad, you know, I tell you what, it even looks better than it did when I done it before. So I think the rings are gone. So next video we're going to strip down the bottom end. There's all the valves in there, as you can see. They're all still good by the looks of it. I mean, I will properly test it, and we'll do that in a video as well, and I'll show you how you leak test all this sort of stuff. But there we have it. I mean, it's normally this cylinder that goes, people. But if you want to refer back to my old video, where I take the head off of an engine, that actually does show you a cracked liner that I wasn't expecting. So that might be a better video to watch if you're looking for a cracked liner. But yeah, it seems okay. It seems okay. Obviously, like I say, there is a problem, but seems to be the problem is deeper lying. So we're gonna tear into the bottom of this engine in the next video. So that's it for now, guys. This video is probably already very long. It's more of an informative video. I'm including it into the build series because it is the engine from this bike, and to be honest, from what we found out, we're probably going to be ending up rebuilding this and using it again. Definitely worth a go, I think. It's definitely worth a go. So in the next video, like I say, we're going to strip down the bottom end. And I'll go through all, I'm going to strip it all out, and I'm going to explain everything and go through it all and show you how all the gears work and the common second gear issue that happens with these and all that. So, you know, it's going to be a general informative couple of videos on this 5EB engine. As you can see, you know, we're doing all right. So forget making this video any longer. I've just noticed some condensation around my lens. I bet you're seeing it, this with a mist around. I'm gonna have to sort that out before the next video. That's for damn sure. Oh, that's unfortunate, but hey ho, we're done now. I've just got to tidy up and call it a night now. So I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you like what you're seeing, and see you soon. Thanks.